Hello again. Now, taxpayers are paying millions of rand for suspended government officials. The Gauteng Health Department paid its top legal head over 4 million rand just to stay at home since July 2019. Questions are now being asked as to why civil servants get paid while they are on suspension. I'm joined now by Tahir Maepa from the Public Service Commercial Union of South Africa, and I'm also hoping to speak to Sandile, who's a labour and employment expert about this. Tahir, good afternoon. Welcome to today. Thank you very much for your time. Hopefully shortly we'll be joined by Sandile, our labour and employment expert as well. I mean, from you as somebody who is part of this union, part of the Public Service Commercial Union of South Africa, what's your take about the fact that many suspended government officials, public servants, are getting paid millions of rand while they're suspended and just staying at home?
Yeah, but then it's true. Unfortunately, this is the norm across the public service. What you see is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of public servants, especially in the security cluster, meaning the police services, correctional services. That's where we find a lot of these kinds of suspensions. Now, there's two things that are happening here, Braden. One is that some departments are using suspensions as punitive measure. So they put you on suspension, they frustrate you, and they don't move with your disciplinary hearing for one reason or the other, which is contrary to the spirit of the Labour Relations Act and the Public Service Act that says that disciplinary actions must be swift, it must be done as quickly as possible, and it must be dispensed of. The reasoning behind that is that you cannot have a situation where a person is on suspension and he gets paid for months on end, and they are not saving this country. It is wrong for both the citizens of this country, and it's also not in the best interest of the individuals themselves. Now, the question of why do public servants get suspended with pay is that that's what the law is. It's unlawful to suspend anybody without pay, because of then it means that you are preempting the outcome of the disciplinary hearing. Then it becomes punitive before even the disciplinary hearing starts.
So it's imperative, So it will be imperative then for what you are saying. You can't suspend without pay because the law won't allow you. However, you need to speed up the process. Then if you suspend somebody today, you have to speed up the process for whatever hearing or inquiry must happen in the shortest possible time, so that if they are found guilty, then they're out of the system. If they are not found guilty, they come back and everybody knows that it's all okay.
Absolutely. That's how it's supposed to happen. But we all know that we're faced with challenges of accountability in the public service. The people who has the authority to suspend, nobody is holding them accountable to make sure that they push and they dispense of these disciplinary hearings. That is why I'm saying most of these suspension, or some of them, are used punitively. Some of them are used for purposes of corruption. Somebody wants to be corrupt, and there's somebody in between who's an impediment. So what do, you put them on suspension, and then you push whatever that you want to push, and later on you bring them back. Because these people don't care. They don't care about the service. They don't care about the citizens. All that they care about is to be able to gain unduly through corrupt activities. We all know about the case of Apleni versus the Minister of Home Affairs. It was a similar thing. Apleni claimed that, you know what, the only reason that I've been suspended is because of they wanted to shift me because of there was this particular thing that is supposed to happen. So this thing is broad, but the essence, Braden, is that it's not supposed to happen, and people who are doing it are supposed to be held accountable, but unfortunately, nobody's being held accountable.
Okay, let's bring in Sandile, who's just joined us, Tahir. He's, of course, a labour and employment expert. Sandile, good afternoon. We just got started talking with Tahir, but I want to get your views and about this whole issue. He's saying you cannot suspend any government, we're talking about public service here, any public servant without pay. The law does not allow you, but the problem lives where people are suspended for long periods and they're being paid before any of the processes, whether disciplinary or otherwise, have been concluded. What's your take on this, Sandile? Welcome to Today.
Good day, Praten. I would imagine I'm not going to deal with the motive behind the suspension. As he correctly pointed out, sometimes suspension can be abused. But if you talk about suspension in the way the law allows it, you suspend a person because the offense committed by the person is of a serious nature that you don't need that person to be at work, or that person is going to interfere with the investigation that needs to be conducted. So suspension is allowed, and suspension has to be with pay. And what sometimes happens is that the disciplinary hearing itself takes longer than expected, because there are a number of issues that would be raised by the employee, or the employer, on the other hand, could be that there's an information that he needs to give to the employee for the hearing to take place. So ordinarily, it will take longer than it is expected.
Yeah, so there should be ways then of expediting this. I guess the question that I was asking earlier, why are public servants being paid while on suspension, is not the right question, because as you say, and as Tahir says, the law says you can't suspend without pay. The question is, why are these processes to deal effectively with the suspended officials not being speeded up? Do you have a view, Sandile?
There's no one-size-fits-all, Praden, on these issues, because what happens is that sometimes you suspend after you have conducted an investigation. So all what is required there is to conduct a disciplinary hearing because you've got a report. But there are instances where people get suspended because you need to conduct an investigation. And those kind of matters will ordinarily take long. And when they take long, it means that your suspension has to be extended now and then. But there is no reason, if the disciplinary hearing goes very smooth, that after the investigation has been conducted and the employee is being suspended, because you can suspend an employee even after the investigation, that hearing should go very quick, because investigation has been done, documents are there, all what is required is just the employee must go and answer.
Yeah, I guess we can't paint all these cases with the same brush, because they'll have some specifics around each and every one of them. But the overall impression is that millions of rand are being paid out, like in this example I used of the legal head of the Gauteng Health Department, who was suspended to stay at home. Well, was suspended in July 2019, and apparently has earned more than 4.7 million rand, nearly 5 million rand. And there's many others. Tahir, you were saying earlier it's a tip of the iceberg, but you said, in your view, from your knowledge as a public service commercial union, the worst culprits are in the security cluster, like in the police service.
Absolutely, and it's quite a coincidence, but that myself and Mr. July were handling a case. Well, he may not know that I'm involved in that case in the Department of Home Affairs without mentioning the details. But that specific case, I must say that it was speedily done. Within 2 weeks, the case was basically, even though we could not finalize it due to certain circumstances, but it was done in a speedily format. So there are positives in other areas insofar as these cases. But in the police sector, for instance, Braden, we have seen a situation where some officials have been on suspension for 5-7 years. They even forgot that these people are on suspension. The other thing that complicates things, and also without having to paint everything with the same brush, is the involvement of lawyers. Lawyers, they really complicate discipline within the public service, because there's a lot of money to be made. And we have seen many instances where these investigations are dragged unnecessarily, because of the more you investigate, the more you make money. And I'm saying those are exceptional circumstances. But I believe that the moment you say that you believe that an individual is guilty of some form of misconduct, you already know where to look. And in so doing, there's no reason why investigation can take 12 months, 8 months. It doesn't matter how. This is not a criminal investigation. It's a conduct within the public service. And in many instances, you would find that the documentation is available there. It's just to piece the evidence together to make sure that you charge. But we don't see most of these things ever happening, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I'm just thinking as you're talking there about these amounts of money, somebody suspended for so many years. What happens? So that salary will never be paid back if they are found guilty. If a disciplinary inquiry happens and then after 2 years, no, Mr. Moyane, we find you guilty. Do I have to pay it back, or that's it, I just lose my job? What is it? What is the experience? What is the process, Sandile?
You remain an employee, and it is the employer who decides to suspend you. That it does not require you to be at work, and therefore you are not expected to pay that money, even if you happen to be found guilty after the disciplinary hearing.
And could there be other, if you're not found guilty as a public servant and you're cleared, do you have a recourse, like you could say, my reputation has been damaged and beyond my salary, I need you to compensate me for, I've suffered, my dignity was impaired. Has that happened from your experience, Sandile? Is it possible?
You may have to prove more than the issue of that the employer charged you. You have to demonstrate a motive. If you think that the employer was malicious in charging you, then you can do that. But instances where the employers should not be scared of disciplining employees, because if they don't find them guilty, they are going to be sued. So the Labor Relations Act is there to protect both the employer and the employees. And therefore you can't sue unless you have a very strong case to prove that the hearing was for ulterior motives.
Okay. In the last 2 minutes we have, gentlemen, on this topic, I just want each of you to give me some parting thoughts. We've established, as you've clarified, that public servants, when they are suspended by law, the government, the employer, has to continue paying their salaries until such time that the process is concluded. We've also established that because disciplinary hearings by nature involve lawyers, they might take longer, and sometimes lawyers will drag it out because they are getting handsomely paid, as Tahir said. So we have established those as well, that you don't have to repay the money just now, Sandile. But what would you want us as ordinary citizens to understand about the suspension of public servants and the cost that they are having? Because the salary bill of government is huge anyway. Now here's somebody sitting at home being paid millions of rand doing nothing. What are your parting thoughts on that, Tahir, in less than a minute?
Well, brother, I promise you, there's no one who likes to be on suspension, because suspensions are a little bit problematic in terms of your family and all that. All of us, we want, if you are on suspension, you want to be suspended and the case be dispensed of as soon as possible. The issue that we are facing with is accountability. There's no checks and balances. The Office of the Public Service Commission needs to be given more powers to render an oversight role in terms of discipline in the public service, so that when they pick up these kinds of cases that I referred to, where a person has been on suspension for 5 years, then the head of the department needs to be called to order and remedial action needs to be made. So long as there's no sense of accountability, we are going to continuously face these challenges, and we will be losing millions and hundreds of millions due to these suspensions.
Sandile, your parting remarks?
Yeah, for me, my view is that I don't think the issue is the suspension per se, if it is exercised properly. The issue is the disciplinary hearing, which Tahir and his other colleagues, they need to reconsider. Do you need that kind of disciplinary hearing wherein it is conducted in the form of a criminal process? Because that's where the problem is. Once you have a disciplinary hearing conducted in terms of criminal process, it takes long. And that was not the intention of the Labour Relations Act. The Labour Relations Act wanted a very smooth and straightforward disciplinary hearing wherein a person is being told, tell us why we should not dismiss you if the offense is serious. You put that offense in front of the employee and the employee responds to that. Now you have to involve lawyers. And I'm not for a moment agreeing with Tahir on the lawyers dragging matters. My experience is that some of these matters get to be resolved very quick because of the involvement of lawyers. We could have an experience of 1 or 2 matters where lawyers dragged the matters. So that generalization may not be true.
Okay, to be fair...
So they need to revisit.
Yeah, to be fair, as we conclude, I need to have Tahir respond to you there. Are you willing, Tahir, as a union, not to approach these disciplinary hearings of suspended public servants as a criminal case?
Absolutely. I agree with Mr. July 100%. And this is where the problem is. But the reason why they are conducted in that fashion, I squarely blame lawyers, truly, because it is due to the allowance of legal representation within the public service that has messed up things. The public service is big. For instance,
is that an option? Is that an option or is it a must? So can an employee who's been suspended, a public servant, choose to go that route of legal representation or not, or is it a must?
No. You see, the problem is that if you must level the playing fields. Government usually, especially when coming to senior managers, they prefer to use lawyers. So consequently, an employee will have to get a lawyer, which is quite costly on a part of an employee because of he's not paying or she's not paying with the taxpayers' money. But the government has an open checkbook to run these matters for a very long time, and we, the taxpayers, are supposed to foot the bill.
No, thank you, gentlemen, for your views there.